In this lesson, we are going to learn how to use the HTTP service to fetch remote data. The HTTP service is a core AngularJS service that uses the browser's XML HTTP request object or JSON-P to communicate with remote servers. In our case, we are going to use it to load a JSON file that has the categories collection that we've been working with, as well as load a separate JSON file for the bookmarks collection. We are also going to see a few tricks that I've picked up that makes working with the HTTP service and a model a bit more convenient. And so if we hop into our categories model, the first thing that we need to do is inject the $HTTP service. We can also get rid of the local categories collection. Now, one thing that I like to do when I am working with remote services is to create an endpoint map for the possible endpoints that I would need to call. In this case, it is just a single endpoint, so I'm going to create a URLs object and create a property on there called fetch that we're going to point towards data categories.json. And then we'll replace this return object with an actual call using the HTTP service. And the nice thing about the HTTP service is that it has convenience methods baked into it that match RESTful verbs. So in our case, we want to call get. And this takes a single argument, which is a configuration object that constructs the HTTP call itself. So we're just going to pass in the URL like so. Let's hop into the controller, and we are going to switch this up just a little bit, and we're going to call categories get categories immediately. And then, because this returns a promise, we are going to use then to handle that. So after we've made the call and the result has come back, then we can do something. So this will take one argument, a function that represents the success handler of this call, and that takes one argument, which is the result of that call. And from here, we are going to say categories list controller dot categories equals result. Now, there's going to be a problem with this. I will show you in just a moment, but let's go ahead and dump this result and see what it looks like in the browser. Let's refresh the page. And you can see in the console that it's an object with data on that object that has the array that we actually want. So from here, I can actually go back into my controller and I could say equals result dot data. And this would work. Let's refresh the page. We have categories. The problem with this is that I prefer for my controllers not to know about the implementation details of how my data is being returned from the server. And so I like to use a trick to extract this data before I actually send it to the controller. What we will do here is create a method called extract that takes the result and it just returns result.data. And I'm going to create another method here called cache categories, because as it stands now, we're not actually storing the result of categories, and so it's actually stateless, but I want to actually store a reference to the server result so I can use it a bit later. So we will go categories equals extract result return categories. And so from here, instead of returning just the call itself, we can return a promise that has the result of cache categories. Let's refresh the page, and you can see that it's still working, but we are now extracting out that data and then storing a reference to categories. Let's go ahead and do this real quick for the bookmarks. Let's inject $HTTP. I'm going to delete the local collection here, create my endpoint map, we'll create the extract method, the cache bookmarks method, $HTTP get and fetch cache bookmarks. We'll go into our bookmarks controller. We'll just shuffle this around a bit. There we go, and let's refresh the page. And you can see now we have categories and bookmarks coming in to our page as it was before, but now we're pulling it from the JSON files. In the next lesson, we will extend this idea by creating promises and manually resolving them, giving us even more control over how we handle the data when it comes back from the server. See you in the next lesson.